Hey and welcome to our tutorial. Today we'll continue with drawing Polygon shapes inside Microsoft Word using Visual Basic for applications, that is using macro, and we will use what's called the polar coordinate space. So instead of specifying each point for each vertex as the x and y coordinate, we will actually use something different. So the polar coordinate space, you can imagine you have the origin point, for example, down here being point 0 and 0 degrees. And we can set the position of any point based on the distance from the origin, the r as the radius, and the angle theta. Now we cannot just tell Word to draw a point in here based on the r and the angle. We have to first convert to Cartesian coordinate system, which is the x and y value. And we do it by saying that x equals r radius times cosine the angle, and dy equals r times sine the angle. And that's really it. That's all that was used to draw all those polygons up here. So if I open the actual macro to draw those shapes, you can see that it's fairly simple and fairly short. We just set the number of segments, which is also used to set the size of the array to store all those points. And then we have radius, origin, and the angle. And you can see that I'm actually using the sine function for the x and minus cosine for the y. And the reason for this is by just switching those and setting the plus and minus signs, I can set where the first point will be drawn. So if I just say this will be without minus sign, it will be flipped. Actually, this is not visible because it has too many sides. If I change the number of sides to maybe just 3 for the triangle, you will see that it's flipped along the y-axis. If I just switch the sine and cosine function the way it should be, so cosine and sine function, it will be rotated by 90 degrees, so first point is up on the right side. I actually like it the way it was before, so it's minus cosine for y and sine for x. This way the first point is up on top in here, which is fine for most of the shapes. So what we can do today is we can try to draw some different shape for each vertex, for example like this. And that's because we already know the position of each vertex. It will be fairly simple. That's also one thing which you cannot do by if you simply insert the shape using the insert shapes function, because you can draw a polygon like this, but you will not have access to individual points. So let's jump to our blank document or previous document and start making some changes. We will draw a shape for each vertex, so we need this loop again once more, so everything will be above this first shape. So I'll just copy this part and I will say draw something for each vertex, and I will just type in ActiveDocument.Shapes.AddShape, and that will be msoShapeOval. We already have the point stored in the polypoint, so just copy this one. This is the x, and if I change the second index to 2, it is the y value. And I may have another variable for size, so say this is the point size for both width and height, and I will say select. Okay, so this is not add shape. Okay, this is fine. So I will define the point size as some value, for example 6, and I probably need to subtract the half of the point size from both the x and y, so it will be in the middle. So I will subtract minus point size divided by 2. That should be fine. So let's see what this does. If I run this macro, I'm getting a small circle for each vertex, which is great. So what I can do is I can set the color to be somehow similar to the color of the polygon. So this is not what I want to do. So I will set a new variable being the object color as long, and I will set the object color to random value. I will reuse this part, it's a random value. Then I will set the polygon color to be object color, and I will do the same with each point. So with this point, I want to set the Fill.ForeColor.ObjectThemeColor to be object color. Actually, I will probably set the line color instead of the fill color, and I will not show any fill at all. So I will set the line for color, and I will say Fill.Visible to 0. I'll say end with. If I run this, I will get very same looking color of the line as the polygon. I may probably make it a little bit darker so I can use the tint and shade. So I'll say Line.ForeColor.Tint&Shade equals minus 0.7, for example. That will make the color a little bit darker. I can also make the line a little bit bolder. So line width weight equals maybe 1.5 points. I will also move it a little bit to the right and to the bottom. And if I run this, you can see every time I run this macro, I get a polygon with a random color, and each vertex has a small circle with a darker color. So if I run this again with more sides, for example 5 sides, I will again get a random color with vertices being highlighted. So let's talk about the selection. If I have quite a lot of sides, like 8 or so, everything, I have to select everything manually, for example like this, so I can group it, which will be a tedious task for so many shapes, and selecting in Word is sometimes quite hard. I can definitely use the select objects tool, but even then it's sometimes it takes a lot of time. So what I can do is I can optimize or change my code to make it easier. One thing which I was doing in previous tutorials, I was saying ActiveDocument.Shapes.select.all, which is great if you have just one big shape or one object with many shapes. If you have everything else in your document that will select all the shapes, it may be not what you want. So what we can do instead is we can use the select function for each shape. And I can use for this polygon, I can set select, which will just select it. If I don't specify anything else, only this object will be selected. So if I run this, only the polygon is selected. If I want also the other shapes to be selected, I can say .select, and I can specify the optional property, which is to replace the previous selection. If I say false, it will act as adding things to the selection. So it will add those objects to the selection. So if I run it like this, both the polygon and all the small shapes will be selected. I can see it if I open the selection pane. You can see everything is selected now. Now what I can do is I can group everything by just typing in selection.shapeRange.group, and if I run it again, I will just get one group with all the shapes inside the group. Of course, I can still make changes to the group. I can say with this group I want to set the name to, I don't know, sorry, I'm having hard times finding the right character. Polygons and width. And this way, if I have many objects in my document, everything is nicely grouped, so we can move everything at the same time. So if I run this macro 3 more times, you will see I'm just getting those nice groups, so I can move everything that is the polygon, including the small circles around my document, without any problems. And that's it for today's tutorial. Thanks for watching.